So if I say the word surrender, how does that feel? Do you feel scared? Do you feel liberated? Do you feel tightness in your body? This week, we are going to take a look at the word surrender and why resisting surrender is so common, and yet the ability to surrender is a power move and can actually bring you into some of the best health of life.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. This week, we're going to do a thought experiment, and we're going to take inventory of our body, our body's responses, and start asking ourselves a little bit deeper in terms of why we feel a certain way. So I'm going to say a word, and you're going to drop into your body and really check in with how that word makes you feel. Are you ready? The word is surrender. Ooh, it's a good one, right? So clear all of the busyness in your mind and really drop into your body and feel how you feel when you hear the word surrender. Does it feel natural? Do you feel your body tense in resistance? Does that word feel scary or elicit fear in some way? Where do you feel it in your body? I'm going to have you go through this exercise after you listen to this entire podcast as well. But I think as you start listening to this episode and you think about the word surrender and the kinds of feelings that it brings up for you, I think that's going to be a really good starting place as I dive into talking about this concept of surrender and why we are so resistant to it. So, why is this important for health? Why is surrender important in women's health? And why is resisting surrender such a challenge for our health? That's the whole premise of this episode. Because surrender is something that we conceptually think is a giving up or a giving over. And because we oftentimes associate the word surrender with, no longer continuing to fight about something, right? That's the most common connotation for it is we are resisting and then we stop resisting. There's a surrender, a waving of the white flag. Okay, I'm not going to fight anymore. When I'm talking about surrender, I'm talking about it in a much bigger way. And as we talk about how this manifests in your life, I think you're going to see why this is such an important concept. So, or at least I hope that's the case. Or listen to this episode a few times and then see how you feel about it, right? Like I said, thought experiment. So, surrender is something that I believe after years of working in holistic women's health is one of the biggest reasons why women have such a hard time with their reproductive health. And the reason for that is we live in a culture where we are expected to be independent, hypervigilant. We are expected to have careers and go to college, all of these kinds of things, right? And we live in a time in history where some families can do it and have one person stay at home, but for the majority of us, it's a two-income household in order to make ends meet. So there is this idea that many women hold, and I see it time and again in my practice, that we have to maintain control in order to be safe. We have to maintain control in order to show our worth, prove that we are worthy, in order to be productive enough, in order to be enough. And it's simply not true. Okay. So I was growing up during a time where, we had Title IX. There was this big push for equality for women. Title IX came a little bit before my time, but I was right in the wake of it, right? So when I was going through school, there was this huge push to apply for college, to go to college. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but I remember when I went to graduate from high school, everybody had a card up on the wall of where they were going to school after they graduated. And it was such a big deal to have a college after your name on this "where are the seniors going" thing. So it was very much part of the culture, and it has been for many generations. This is part of the reason why some of the trades are suffering right now, is because we have had such a push to go to college. But, there's this push to go to college, there's this push to be an independent woman, there's this push to be able to do all the things by yourself. I mean, I used to be one of these hyper independent, and I still can be, but women's bodies aren't wired that way. We are wired to nurture and caretake, and that does not mean have children. It just means that we are wired to nurture and caretake. We are wired for multitasking because theoretically, in a village of little people, you are helping to keep track of all of the little people, right? It goes back to this hunter gatherer idea where the men go and hunt and they do the physical labor gathering part of it, and the women tend to the domestic duties, right? And I'm not positioning this in a anti-feminist way either. I am just simply saying from a biological evolutionary standpoint, this is what we're wired to do. Men are action oriented. They're the go, the do, the get done, right? And women are the receptive feminine energy. And when we work against that, several problems are created. One, we emasculate the men in our lives. So then they don't step up and take initiative, and they are not action oriented the way that they are wired to be. But we end up overcompensating for that void, right? Where they're not stepping into that action oriented energy. And we feel that we have to do that in order to feel safe. Sometimes we don't think about it at a conscious level, it's at an unconscious level. But that's why I asked at the very beginning of this episode to check in with your body and how does the word surrender make you feel? You might not consciously think about the fact that how you load the dishwasher is an act of control. How you schedule your day, how you do anything in your day to day life, when you have to be in control of all the little details and you can't step back and trust that your partner is going to take care of any of those details, then you are not able to step into surrender. So, how does this translate into women's health? So, this concept of surrender, I'm not saying is a giving away of your power. When I'm talking about surrender, I'm talking about it in terms of being able to come into your body, into stillness in your body, and allow for things to step into your life and step into your energy and step into your awareness. Okay. And we are conditioned in our culture to go after things, to be a goer and doer and get shit doneer. I am the poster child of that energy, okay? So I am not throwing stones here. I have been the embodiment for far too long, and I think that's why I feel this episode is so darn important right now, is that being action oriented is valued in our culture, but women have been stepping into those roles because men haven't been, or men are overdoing it. So women feel like they need to maintain some level of control in their life. And really, it's all about balance and advocating for a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine. And the interplay of those energies in our life. Everybody embodies, it doesn't matter how someone identifies, everybody embodies masculine and feminine energy, yin and yang, if you will. But women, because of needs of safety and security and forced independence, whether that's desired or not, doesn't matter, really struggle with being able to give the reins over to anyone. This is kind of like doing a trust fall and being worried that you're not going to get caught. So, surrender is incredibly important for feminine energy. And it is one of the hardest things for women to do because it does play into these ideas of safety and security. So, when we are hyper vigilant and we have too much control, we try to over control our life. Control is actually an illusion. The fact that we control our life, but that can be more of a spiritual conversation for another day. But this level of needing things to be perfect, needing things to happen in lockstep, holding ourselves to these really, really high aggressive benchmarks for performance. When our hormones are not the same as our male counterparts, they do not ebb and flow the same way. We have a intricate dance of hormones that happen throughout the course of the month that make the feminine body tick. And when we're trying to force something and push ourselves through activities that are too strenuous for where we are in our cycle, or we feel like we just have to micromanage every last little detail. I know I use the dishwasher as an example, but I mean, it could even be on the fertility journey. It could be trying to get the perfect period. It could be mastering a task. It could be working for a job promotion. It does not matter. Anytime we are pushing ourselves outside of the bounds of what our energy can sustain, we are creating the right construct for dis-ease, disharmony to happen in the body. And we're overspending our chi or our vital energy. So when we hold on to things that shouldn't be ours to hold on to, or we're clinging to the control of things because it gives us in our bodies some feeling of equilibrium or safety, this is where cycle related challenges begin, fertility challenges begin. And then by the time you end up getting to perimenopause and your veil of estrogen is lifting and your progesterone is shifting and all of these kinds of things, you no longer have anything to soften any of the bumps. And this is where you feel angry and edgy and irritable because you've just been overcompensating and doing these things for so many years and not complaining about it and just doing it as a form of control. And then you reach this point in your life where you're like, my vital energy is a finite bucket. Why is it that you can't help with this when you've already conditioned your family in the opposite? Okay. So, this idea of surrender is critically important for reproductive health in women. It requires some trust, and that is really hard. It requires some faith in yourself and something bigger than yourself, in your body, in your body's ability to do things, in your social construct. So, whether this is your partner or your family or whoever it requires some trust, and trust is scary. Trust is scary because that means that you're letting go of the reins and you're letting go of control. So, surrender can be terrifying for a lot of us because we have this belief, true or untrue, we have this belief that the more we control things, the safer we're going to be. And it throws us into living in more masculine energy, which disrupts our feminine cycles. And we need to, when I'm inviting you to, as I talk about this, to think about where in your life you could practice stepping back and not trying to control something. Asking yourself questions like, is this important? Why is it important? And is this a place that I can step back? And I keep coming back to the dishwasher because it's a really easy illustration, right? You load it one way, somebody else in the house loads it a different way, my kids load it a third way, like, everybody has a different way of doing it. Yes, you may find that the dishes are the cleanest when it comes out when you do it. However, is that a place that is worth spending your energy when you're also a full-time working person, or you also have a family to take care of, or maybe all of the above, right? So in the grand scheme of things, how important is it to spend your energy on that dishwasher? Okay. I'm just giving that as an example. It's a really easy one. But you can see that example in lots of areas of your life. This is especially important when we're talking about conception. I cannot tell you the number of clients that I have worked with over nearly a decade now that try to control their conception journey. They try to control when they're getting pregnant, the outcome. Once they are pregnant, they try doing things to make sure that they're not going to have a miscarriage. They try to control the experience. And yes, there are things that you can do to support the body before, during, and after conception. This is the world that I work in. But conception, childbirth, first menarche, like these are things that are outside of our control. Our body knows what it needs to do. We just have to get out of our head and get out of the way and allow the body to do what it knows how to do. And now we will take a short break from our episode to share an offering that will take your healing to a whole new level. How would it feel to stress less, feel more spaciousness in your body, all while reducing physical symptoms? I can tell you from personal experience, it's one of the most empowering and freeing experiences one can have. Rebel Remembered is a year-long journey using goddess archetypes, body wisdom, and ancient modalities to bring a level of health to your body unlike anything else. As a Chinese medicine practitioner, it has always been clear to me that the emotional body is at the root of physical symptoms in the body. This program is truly holistic, addressing physical symptoms by exploring spiritual and emotional themes, much like this episode. This opportunity only opens once a year, so be sure to get on the waiting list for when enrollment opens this fall. The link is in the show notes. And now, back to the show. I had this really interesting conversation with another practitioner friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about this idea of controlling conception and how detrimental it is to everyone's health involved. And really, the best way to support conception is to make sure that the body has all the tools that it needs and then let nature take its course. Because Chinese medicine believes that heaven and earth come together to create humanity. And there's this heavenly mandate that is entered into and executed at the time of conception. And that isn't something you can force. You can't say, "Hey, spirit baby, it is time to get in my body now." It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. You can engage with that spirit baby. You can work on making sure that your body is as healthy as it possibly can be. You and your partner can work on making sure that you're both as healthy as possible. I'm a big advocate of that because sperm does have a very heavy hand in miscarriage, but this is not something you can control. It is bigger than you. It is bigger than you and your partner. So surrender becomes incredibly important because if you don't learn it at the conception part, you definitely learn it at the birth part. There's a reason that childbirth is a rite of passage. It forever shifts you into a new version of you, whether you want it to or not. It is the ultimate act of surrender because you have to trust your body knows what it's doing. You have to trust your baby. And you have to trust that you both know how to work together through this whole experience. And even in situations where maybe your birth didn't end up the way that you had anticipated, there is still an element of surrender in that experience. So, surrender is incredibly important. And it is a practice, it is something that you work on. And you ask yourself and get curious around how your body responds to different places and spaces in your life where you try to surrender. So, I'll give you a good example. For me, I didn't realize how much I tried to control the parenting equation in my house. And I just stepped in and did it, right? It needed to be done. I would just step in and do the things and, care of the groundation or the reward or the whatever it was, right? I just did it. And I discovered that if I co-parented with my partner, my husband would step in if I stepped back and created that space for him to step into. And I felt really sheepish when I figured that out because I was like, wow, I've literally not allowed him to step into his masculine energy because I've just taken control of everything. And it actually affected the dynamic of our relationship in a very positive way when I didn't try to control everything. And we've had some really beautiful moments in our marriage, in our relationship, in our partnership since I have learned how to surrender. I still have moments where it's really hard for me to do that because I've been socially conditioned, right? Just like all of you, I've been socially conditioned too. But it is being self aware. And that's why I'm doing this episode. I want to invite you to be self aware and notice places in your life where you just automatically charge ahead and do things. And maybe you could do it differently. Or maybe you could look at your partner and go, hey, it would feel good if you did this, or it would feel good if you helped me with this. And because men are action oriented, and again, I'm kind of assuming masculine, feminine energy here, not necessarily gender, but masculine energy naturally wants to be action oriented. So you're allowing them to be their best version of themselves and you to be the best version of yourself. I've had this conversation one on one with clients, and I have found that when my clients master this idea of being able to turn off the noise in their head, and, sometimes it requires putting your hands physically on your body, a hand over your heart, a hand over your womb space, both hands over your heart, whatever it is, so that you're creating like a physical touch point on your body. And then dropping your awareness down into your body, taking the noise out of your head. I picture a blank white room so that nothing comes into my mind. This is the visual that I get in order to be able to clear the busyness in my brain. I'm an Aquarius, my brain is a very busy place, so it has taken practice for me. So this is a skill that you practice over time. It will not be perfect right out of the gate. Even people who are practiced in meditation still, there are days that your brain is a busier place than others, okay? So clear your mind of as much of the noise and riffraff as you possibly can and really become aware of how you feel in your body. And in this space, ask yourself, how does surrender feel? And you'll notice your chest might tighten, your gut might tighten, your whole body might feel like you're being chased by a tiger. This could be a little affronting at first. So just be aware of that. And whatever your reaction is okay. Just be aware of it because that awareness is where it all begins. You'll ask yourself how surrender feels, and then start asking yourself places that, how does it feel if my kids load the dishwasher? And then you'll notice if you have a physical reaction or not. Again, keep coming back to the dishwasher because it's an easy one, but it could be anything. You could ask your body anything and see how you physically respond. How does it feel if somebody does something for me? Does it feel uncomfortable if somebody helps me? I had a really hard time with that one too, because I felt like it meant that I was weak if I had to ask for help. A lot of women have been socially conditioned to believe that. And I actually realized being able to ask for help is a strength. And I do not have it perfect, believe me. Just a couple of days ago, my husband looked at me and he goes, "Do you want help with that? All you have to do is ask, Adrian." And, being postpartum and needing to ask for help during my pregnancy and postpartum and all of these things, like, I've really had to exercise that skill set. It's been hard for me, but I'm aware of it. I'm conscious of it. And I look back at my life and I realize that I struggled with period problems right out of the gate, but I was also struggling with issues of control to be perfect and have everything look a certain way and to not allow anyone to find any chinks in my armor because that meant that my tender heart was exposed to the world. And as a very sensitive, very emotional person, that was very scary for me. So I maintained control over my environment so that nobody could hurt my feelings and make me cry because that was really embarrassing for me. And if you've been following this show for a while, you know that I've cried on several of these episodes. So I've definitely done work in this area, but it's not perfect. So do not expect perfection of yourself as you work through this exercise. Okay. But I wanted to introduce this thought experiment because I have found year over year in the work that I do, the inability to surrender because we see surrender as weakness. We see it as waving a white flag and a giving up or a giving over. And in fact, it's actually a power position. It's a very different way to think about it, isn't it? In fact, it is a power position because it means that you can actually not be controlled by this thing on your shoulders because we've been conditioned to believe that our brain is superior. But when you're in a scary situation, what have you noticed? In some of the scariest moments of your life, your body responds first and then your brain catches up, right? That shows how intelligent your body is and how slow your brain actually is. Even the most intellectual, intelligent, high IQ human being, their body is smarter than their brain is. So, in this exercise, this is why I'm inviting you to check in with your body. See how your body physically responds to certain ideas, like the dishwasher, like allowing your partner to take your kids to the drop off line when you've always done it because you do it a certain way. or let somebody else pack lunches because you've always done it a certain way, right? So when we allow and we go into our body and we ask our body these questions, our body is brilliant. It knows what it needs to do. It knows what feels good to it and what doesn't feel good to it. It knows how to heal itself. Why wouldn't we ask the superior intelligence here? Surrender is of critical importance in your reproductive health. You will notice fewer cramps. You will notice fewer clots. You will notice your cycles start to regulate when you're able to work with your cycle rather than trying to control everything, which gives you the opposite energy. Women's bodies are receptive. Just think about how we are built, for Pete's sake. We are literally the embodiment of a receptor. And yet we fight this energy all the time. So work on this as a little exercise. You can do it as much as you want. Take a few minutes when you roll out of bed in the morning, put your hands over your heart or one on your heart and one on your womb, and ask your body how you are today. Ask your body, how do you feel about the day coming up? How do you feel about having your kids wait at the bus stop with your husband instead of you? How does it feel to delegate a task to somebody on your team at work, right? So, asking yourself some of these questions and getting into a practice where you check in with your body this way, you're going to start to find that you can actually tell the difference between your body responding and your brain responding. In the beginning, it's a little muddy and it's harder to tell because you have just placed so much emphasis on this thing on your shoulders that you think that your head is the only wisdom that your body holds, and it's not true. Your body holds far more wisdom. And when you do this practice on a regular basis, make it a little 5-minute exercise as you roll out of bed in the morning. This does not require a ton of time, but places where you control things, maybe you're in the middle of the day and you're picking up the counter in the kitchen and you just stop and you go, how would it feel if somebody else were doing this task right now? And then by the time you get to perimenopause, then you're not harboring so much resentment because you haven't been doing all the things for the last 20 years. And then you get to the point where your hormones change and it just pisses you off that all of a sudden you're the only one doing these things. Why is it that I'm the only one doing these things? You people have two capable hands. Why am I the only one that's doing this? When your family's looking at you and going, "Holy shit, you're the only one that's ever done this, and you yell at us when we don't do it your way." And that's where some of the disconnect comes in by the time people get to perimenopause, is like your hormones and your internal experience is changing, and your family is like, "I don't know what to do right now. I'm not trying to make you mad, but you're mad, and I can't figure it out because this is something that you've always just taken care of." Right? The more you practice this skill now, the easier it will be as you go through every single one of your life stages through your entire life. So, this episode, it does not matter where you are in your life. This is a critical skill. So, learn how to check in with your body, learn how to determine the difference between what is ego brain wisdom versus body intuition or body generated wisdom. Work on practicing getting quiet in your mind and asking your body questions and seeing what you get for answers. It will respond with tightness. Sometimes it responds with cool stuff like images or words. Sometimes, like, things will just kind of rise to the surface and you're like, I have no idea why that happened right now, but it makes sense. Or maybe it doesn't make sense and then you have to sit with it. And like a week later, you're like, oh, that's what my body was trying to tell me. It's really cool what happens when you allow, but you have to surrender to be able to tap into that higher wisdom. It is not a giving over or giving away of your power. It is a plugging in to the higher intelligent power that you hold in your body. Women's bodies are powerful. Women are powerful. But we've been taught that power looks a certain way, when in fact, it's the ability to work in the flow that is the power move. Because you are healthy. When you are healthy, you are resourced. When you are resourced, you can do anything.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at MoonEssenceMe on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.